Does my wearing this hat bother you? Do you think if you saw somebody walking down the street with this hat, would it provoke certain opinions about that person? Think about it. Think about what it would mean and what judgment you would place while I tell you some fun facts as you think. We celebrate on July 4th, right? But you know, it was actually voted for, the Declaration of Independence, on July 2nd. Another fun fact, New York, for all its greatness as a signature American city, actually abstained on that vote. The only one of the original 13 colonies not to vote for independence. Think about that. So, the hat, did it bother you? Not just because I'm on TV. And yes, somebody came in and fixed my hair. What'd you think was going to happen? This matters. So, forget about not seeing my face, you're on TV. I'm saying the hat. How does it hit you? Now, patriotism in your face. We need to think about what it means that the suggestion of patriotism has become a little problematic. When you see someone with an in-your-face logo or a flag on a vehicle or in front of a house, do you assume that person is some kind of conservative zealot? You know, I've had people ask me why I have a flag on my truck, and they're not being wise guys. They say, well, what do you have that on? You're not a Republican. People say they embrace the flag, even when spouting ideas that are destructive, but that's their right. The problem is greater than a political party seeming to co-opt our national symbol, even in the pursuit of sometimes un-American aims. That's freedom of choice and political speech. But there is a larger significance to this that I hope you think about this weekend. I know I am. We are desperate for division, so much so that even our country's name and its symbol can trigger a spat. This is not good. And look, you don't have to think America is perfect. It isn't. But just because it's not perfect doesn't mean that collectively we have to be committed to forming a more perfect union. This all or none, that she's everything I want her to be or this country is nothing mentality, is fed directly by our zero-sum politics. You see it everywhere. Too many seeking power seem to be leading with what they're against, what and who you need to be afraid of, to reject. There are two articles that I want to show you that are really interesting examples of this, even if unintentionally so. The first is a story from AP, Associated Press, solid outfit. And it's about how this family in Maine, this one man specifically, wants to put up the biggest flagpole in the world with a huge American flag on it that's like the size of a football field. Look at the headline. An idea meant to unite people is dividing them. Now, what's the suggestion? That people are pissed off that he wants to put a flag up, right? But that's not what it's really about. When you read on, the point that there is really any division is about concerns within the community about what developing it the way this man wants to do might mean. It's not about the flag. It's not about I don't want a flag up there because it's the American flag. It's just about development. So keep going. Why is the headline then? Why do they have that headline? When people are really just worried about everything that comes along with the flag, not the flag itself. Take a look at the headline again. It's clickbait. It is proof of what works these days. You need to see it. You need to think about it. Our most revered and first president, Washington, his words, be a nation, that is all. The flag should be a common bond for us, if anything is. How rarely, though, anybody comes at you with that message in the media or certainly party politics. It's become a little more than a preamble to what follows as a harsh condemnation of some other. I love America, but I hate these people. The second article comes from Gallup, another esteemed agency. This one says, people are no longer extremely proud of America. Okay. First, let's deal with the idea of being extremely anything. We've been conditioned to the idea that extremism is something you want to avoid, not really embrace, if you think about it. How often would you identify yourself as extremely anything? Are you nice? Yeah. Are you extremely nice? No. Are you smart? Yeah. Extremely smart? Extremely in love? I mean, you're really asking somebody to kind of pin the needle on the gauge of whatever you're asking them. It's not a natural way that people see themselves, so it's a little bit of a loaded question. But let's look deeper at what's going on here. And you see in their own data that when was the point in time when extreme love of country mattered? Well, after 9/11. Duh. Right? Why wouldn't it? We were facing a collective and existential threat by extremism. By the way, another reason we don't love that word. If there was any time that we were in an extreme mindset about patriotism, it would be then. And of course, it continued to grow. But then it started to drop. Why? We all know why. Because that wasn't the fear and the risk and the galvanizing thing anymore. Then it was about the war, and Bush took us into the wrong place, and the weapons of mass destruction, and that wasn't true, and the people are dying, and it kept going, and it was more expensive, and there was no real end, and there was political turmoil at home. That's why it started to go down. And when you look at the numbers more deeply, you see, of course it's going to spike after 9/11. But people still, 2 out of 3 or better, are proud of being American, and to a significant degree. And if you think about it, how often do you see 2 out of 3 of us agree on anything? I've often said, I don't even know that we could get a constitutional amendment on the name of this country being America. Now, before you laugh it off, you don't think some faction, probably on the far left, would find out that Amerigo Vespucci, that's the Italian guy it's named after, was as much a man of his era, meaning flawed, and probably not nice to a lot of the people he encountered, like all the other discoverers at that time. Here's a larger point. If somebody went out of their way, and it was actually more than one person, because, all these pieces, they're editors, there's layers, right? You went out of your way to make it look like people are not proud to be American. And it's not even true in their own numbers. Now, I'm not here to tell you, you better love your country. One of the beautiful things about being a free agent in a free country, especially America, nobody can make you love anything. You have all your rights that allow you to say everything about this place is not right. You do that. Knock yourself out. I'm just trying to make you aware that there's a lot of energy being exerted to have you question what you share with one another. To at best ignore it, to not think about what we have in common, to not think about what brings us together. We're celebrating our independence from an oppressor, but it is our interdependence that has always made this country special. Read your history. And you got to think about this energy that's being expended to make you feel differently. And by the way, it's not new, okay? We've been at each other's necks since this place began. It's always been ugly. It is an experiment. It is hard fought and passionate. The real difference is technology. All right? It's so easy to disseminate message now that everybody can have a voice. So there's an echo effect we've never dealt with. It's the same kinds of messages. But now we have a magnification of what have always been minority sentiments, giving outsized power to a fringe fury. The fringe is dominating, certainly in our party politics. So on the day that we celebrate the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, I really want you to take some time to consider the words that began it, because in a lot of ways, we are still under the yoke of an oppressor, but this time it's just of our own maker, okay? It's our making, our acquiescence, our allowance, our participation in this intensifying insult industry and poison politics. Listen to the words, and you tell me they don't apply to what we need to address right now in our society. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of God's nature entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. That's where we are. Everybody's in a state of grievance. All right, that's very fancy, that prose. Good. It was starting off a very big document that benefited from that nature of prose. But this is the line. This is the key to why we wanted to go alone. And it's the key to our challenge today. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. My brothers and sisters, we need a reset. Now, I'm not saying blow it all up. I'm saying blow up the mindset. We need leaders who play to us as a nation, who play to our better lights, and who have promises of how to improve things, and not just by making someone else lose. They have to deny the bases of division in favor of a natural order of unity. That is the idea America was born of. And I hope you fly your flag. I hope you're proud of what this country can be and how far we've come. Because there is absolutely a desperation for division, and we have to change it into a desire to be better. Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.